business author, owner, and a speaker. And he has spent his lifetime studying success. And he has a passion for helping other people realize their success. And in this study, he's had an opportunity to learn from top influencers in a wide range of industries. The greatest lesson that Shane says that he's learned is learning who the little voice is inside his head and how to control this voice. This lesson caused Shane to change his conception in everything of his life and inspired him and to share his personal experience in a book he entitled Think a Better Thought. Shane hopes that this message will be an encouragement to you and help you adapt and grow in your success as well. Shane, come on up. Thank you.
Okay, just let me know. All right, thanks, Craig. It sounds really loud up here. But it's quite an honor to be with you here this morning, and I really appreciate the position that you're in, and what you're trying to do, because personally, I've been fired twice. I've gone from making really good money to no money, losing everything, having perfect credit to losing it all, and having to restart. So I know where you're at, and I hope what I give you today will be something positive for you that you can use and adapt towards your career. A little bit more about me. This is my family. I've got a family business. It's an advertising and marketing agency. So if you do have any kind of marketing and advertising background, I'm going to be hanging around after this, and I can visit with you about what we have going on. Our this is our 15th year, and I've primarily been in sales my whole life. When I was 3 years old, when I was in the third grade, I dug up a yucca plant in our backyard and hopped on a bike and sold it to the local florist. So that was my first sale. Now, I don't know if, here we go. I had this slide to start out with. Do we have any geniuses in the room this morning? We've got one who's saying it? All right. Does anyone believe they're not a genius? Because NASA says we are. They actually did a study on this. Back in the 1950, we launched the first rocket. But less than 75 years before that, we had just invented the first tractor. We were plowing up fields with livestock. And the top people at NASA said, hey, we got a real problem here. We've gone through more change in the last decade than we did the last several hundred years, maybe even 1,000. We've got to get the brightest of the brightest to come work for us. And we're wasting too much time talking to people who aren't smart enough. So they hired this guy named George Land, and there's a TEDx talk that George gives. He passed away a couple of years ago, but I encourage you to watch it. They hired him to put together a test that would identify geniuses. He did this, and they gave the test to about 280,000 people, and it proved to be very, very successful. NASA did not have to separate, using their time to find out if someone was genius or not. They created a very successful space program. Now, what Land decided to do was continue this test, but to give it to kids. And the thinking was, what if we can identify geniuses earlier? Then we can work with them even more and help develop them even more. So he identified a Head Start group, had 1,600 kids, average age was 5, and they gave them the same exact test. It was identical to what these adult scientists and engineers were given. Average age of 5. I need some participation here too, okay? So let me have some guesses. What percentage do you think scored genius? 90? Who said 98? Yeah, the answer is in that first slide, 98. But at age 10, it dropped to 30. And at 15, if you got a teenager, you know that they kind of lose some brain capacity. It dropped to 12. And the adults, the average age was 31, 2%. Now, what do we do in the United States typically at age 5? Right. We start school. And what they concluded was we learn non-creative behavior. So they reference two kinds of learning. This slide's off, but there's convergent, and that's where we're evaluating, we're making judgments, and there's divergent. That's when we're thinking about all the possibilities. We're using our imagination. We're not limiting ourselves with, it's never been done before, or that's not going to work, or I've already heard that. When we are convergently thinking, we're stomping the brakes on our creativity. Here's the problem. You can't just jump back and be at the same speed with your creativity after you hit the brakes. It takes a little bit of time to get back up to speed. So the more we convergently think, the more we're slowing down our creativity permanently, and we start to get stuck. So Land's solution was just find your pre-K self again, right? But as adults, it's just not that easy, right? We've got stuff. The biggest problem that we have is that no matter what you're doing, there's a constant flow of negativity all around you. It's in our whole world, right? If you pull up social media, you watch the news, you just drive in traffic, even if you're doing everything right, you wake up, you say all your prayers throughout the day, right? You be nice to everybody. Somebody can just come up from behind you and whack you with some negativity. You have no control over other people, places, or things. The biggest problem is that we buy a lot of this stuff that's being said. We buy a lot of the judgments that we make on ourselves, like, I'm not successful, I'm a failure. We buy that kind of stuff. So have y'all ever had an experience where you're like, where in the heck did that thought come from? Right? All the time, right? You're like, man, that's the weirdest thought. Where did it come from? I want to do a quick exercise, and this is real simple. What we're going to do is we're going to think two thoughts at the exact same time. One's positive, I'm a successful, and one's negative. We can't flip-flop. We've got to think them at exactly the same time. We're going to take 10 seconds to do it. The negative thoughts, I'm a failure. So I want you to think of them both at exactly the same time. Ready? Go. It can't be done. You can either be one or the other, which is really good news, right? Because if we're thinking negatively, we can just flip a switch. But we have to know how to do it and kind of train ourselves to do it. Our thoughts either help us or they hurt us. It's just like math. If you think positive is, a positive thought, 1 + 1 = 2, throw in a negative, all of a sudden we've taken it away. We've reduced the quality. What we really need to ask ourselves is who's in charge? Where are these thoughts coming from? How's it coming about? So I've got some more science, some more research to share with you here. Our intellect, or our conscious mind, basically believes it's the one in charge. It's controlling what happens and what it's experienced. But our consciousness is only processing typically 15 to 20 bits of information per second. And if you're not familiar with bits, it's just a unit of measurement that we use for communication. Research also shows that decisions are made before our consciousness is aware of it. And this is out of a book called The User Illusion, Cutting Consciousness Down to Size. And it's a pretty good read if you want to check it out. Our brains and our information receptors are actually receiving 11 million bits of information per second. So what's happening to the 10,999,980 other bits? What's going on there? When we're silently reading, we're actually able to consciously process 45 bits per second versus something like counting objects, which is 3. Our senses, our eyes can take in 10 million per second, but can only be conscious of 40. How many people in here remember the full drive to the church this morning? You ever had an experience where you're like, I don't even remember how I got here? Our consciousness is designed to help us survive. Right? It's just the most relevant information at that time for survival. So there's something jumping out in front of you, all of a sudden you're conscious of it. I'm hungry, it's time to eat. You weren't conscious of it before. But we're not paying attention to all the other things going on, like our heart beating, breathing, those kind of things. Can we really know everything that's going on around us? What is responsible for creating the conscious thinking? Well, here's where it gets really cool. Studies show that there's actually a half-second delay between when the decision's made and our conscious decision. So these guys, Kornhuber and Dickey, they performed a study that would measure bioelectrical phenomena that precedes an event. And what they did was they hooked people up to an EEG machine and had them do a simple test where you would flex your finger. That was it. They took the test further and actually placed some electrodes directly on the brain by opening some people up and had them do they were awake, had them do it at the same time. What they found out was the readiness potential, which is brain activity showing a decision's made, occurs a half second before the person consciously has the wish of moving their finger. That's pretty wild. I mean, we're technically, everything that we're doing, our consciousness is a half second behind. But it's what we're feeding our subconscious that is creating these thoughts. And so when you're having a tough spot in life where you've been dealt some blows, and you're looking for employment again, what are you feeding your mind? Because it's very easy to feed it junk. The world provides plenty of that. So we want to talk about how to identify when that's going on, how to stop it, and better things to feed it. Really good food. This is really your biggest obstacle. It's memory. Your conscious experience is based on the past. Another word for this is ego. And this is really the reason why I wrote this book, is because I've been on both sides of the ego talk, whatever you want to call it. I've been in sales where it's like, okay, you got to have a strong ego. You got to be the biggest personality in the room. And then I've also got a lot of people in recovery that I know, and it's like you got to completely deflate the ego, get rid of it. What I believe is never going to get rid of the ego. It's always going to be there, okay? It's just whether I allow it to be in charge or me, because this is what my ego looks like in action. Every time I let it engage, I found myself falling flat on my back. That ball's always getting pulled away. So when I really found the trick that worked for me to identify when the ego was in charge, that's when I'm like, aha, I bet other people have this same issue. We need to share it with them. So how do we keep our ego from controlling our thoughts? It's so simple that most people don't even think about doing it. You've heard of positive thinking, right? Has anyone ever tried positive thinking? How's it worked out for you? Oh, you're laughing. Well, yeah. So think about, when we come into life and this is our brain. Let's pretend, this glass jar is our brain. It's perfectly clean and clear. But, as we go out through life, we start to get a little negativity in there. And people kind of dump it in for us, or we buy it ourselves, and it gets all stirred in there. and we try some positive thinking. All right, so we get a glass of water, do a little bit, but all that junk's still there. Might try a little bit more, but that doesn't work either. The only way to positively think is to flush it out non-stop. And when we start to do it, like in this video, a lot of junk comes up. Sometimes we feel even worse, right? Because it's not working. We're in this society where we expect things to happen right away. Amazon's been really cool, right? Now they can just deliver everything same day. And for some reason, we bought the idea that success should happen that way too, or that results with our thinking should have that thing too. The negativity is always coming. So the only way to battle that is to constantly focus on being positive. The secret is monitoring your thoughts and observing them without judgment. Observation's the real key word here. When you shine the light of observation, if it's true, it's going to stay there. It's not going away. If it's false, you don't have to do anything else because it will just magically fade away. But if you judge it, what are we doing? We're stomping the brakes on our progress. What happens when a judge gives a judgment? What's coming next? A sentencing, right? So when we judge ourselves, we're also sentencing ourselves. Incapable, weak, full of fear, all those kind of things. We want to stop sentencing ourselves. And then when you find that you have a negative thought, you just replace it with a positive one. So has anybody hit the gym this year, right? You know, when you take several months off and then you go in full force, you're pretty sore, right? But if we only go one day and never go back, we all know all that's going to happen is we're just going to get sore for a little bit. If we only go for 1 week, same thing. We're just going to be sore for a week. If we want to see real results, we have to constantly be exercising. We can take a couple of days off, but it has to be a regular thing for a long time. Our mind is a muscle. We have to exercise it, but when we start, just like that jar of water, we'll probably be a little confused. You know, your mind's like, wait a minute, you've been negative for the last 3 years and now you're throwing this at me? Let me try and get you back on track and being negative. These are great questions to ask yourself that really center you in the present moment. What am I thinking right now? Is this thought helping me or hurting me? Does this thought have any benefit for me? Who is thinking this? And I have a workbook that's free. If you'd like it, it's got all these questions. It's got a chapter summary and exercises from the book. All you got to do is go to the website, thinkabetterthought.com. Under the resources tab, you'll find the workbook. And then who is thinking this? Remember, we want to observe these answers. If you're feeling bad, you're also thinking bad. Does anyone ever know when they're about to get mad because they have that feeling inside, right? Or somebody's upset you. For me, it's like, I get that kind of nervousness in my stomach or on my shoulders. You need to monitor your feelings also, because if you're not feeling right, like I said, you're not thinking right. And these are great questions to ask. One that I really love is this happening now? Wreckage of the future is a huge problem. Like, we worry about as much stuff as we can. But how much of that worry ever really happens? Maybe 2%, not very much. A great tool is a thought provoker, right? Because if you're going to your mental gym every day, you got to be reminded to do it. I like to carry a rock in my pocket. This is one I have. I also set up golf tees around my office and the house. Small things that are randomly out of place and that you normally wouldn't notice. That's what a thought provoker is. And what it's designed to do is to make you say, wait, right, what am I thinking right now? Is this thought helping me or hurting me? To develop the habit to check your thoughts. You're the only one that can think for you. And if you're not thinking positively, you're going backwards. So a thought provoker is a great tool when you're starting this out. Here's why this is important. I want to talk about another NASA study because these guys are just really smart. So in the 60s, when we knew we were going to be sending people into space, NASA wanted to have a test where they could determine whether or not somebody would be disoriented while they're working, because you might be sideways, upside down, right side up. And they fitted all their astronauts with goggles that basically took the image they were looking at and turned it upside down 180 degrees. They never took them off. 24/7, they slept in them, they showered in them. And on the 25th day, one of the astronauts wakes up and his brain has corrected the image. He still has the glasses on, but now everything's back right side up. On the 26th through 30th day, every astronaut in the program had the same experience. Their minds all corrected the image. As NASA took the test further, what they found was that any time there was an interruption before a complete 30 days, you had to reset to day one. So say you're day 24, take the goggles off for 5 minutes. It's an automatic reset if you want to have the brain correct itself. How'd you like to be that person on day 24? That's like 55 days of straight being upside down. But what's really cool is we know we can rewire our brains. But if you take a day off, you're going to have to reset and start back over. So that's why when you're doing this kind of thing, setting up some notifications on your phone to remind you, thought provokers, they're all really good things to do to remind you to continue to do this. Remember, we have to look out for this constant negativity that's around us. And, there's even more when you're seeking a job, right? Because you have people telling you what? No, we're not interested, you're not qualified, whatever it is. And the mistake is buying that. Because no means not today, not yet. This may not be the best opportunity for you. We also have to look out for judgment, especially ourselves, right? These are some really good questions to ask related to judgment. How often am I judging myself or others? Does this have any benefit for me? And I really encourage you, when you get home today, ask yourself these questions and be honest with yourself, because the truth really will set you free. I like to compare thinking to nature, right? And think about this with your job search. Has anyone ever planted a rose garden in here or have one outside their house? Yeah. So let's pretend this rose garden is the perfect career, right? So when we start out, we don't have that perfect career yet, right? Or our garden. We have to go buy the plants. We have to do the work, do the search, put the resumes together and all that. And then we do a little digging, right? Plant them. But when we're doing this with our garden, we're not seeing these small plants that we're digging up. We're thinking about the finished product, right? How pretty it's going to look. So when you're doing your job search, now you're thinking about security, what this job's going to be providing to you, right? Your family, what kind of experiences. Our garden, we might give a little food, might get a little water, might even give it a little Roundup, right? Kill the plant. Negative thinking is the equivalent of spraying weed poison on your dreams, on your ideas. And so it's very hard in your situation to stay positive all the time. I know that, right? But when you're negative, you're just dumping crap all over what you're about to do next. And you really got to break that habit. If you can, you'll see amazing things happen in your life. Negative thinking happens when you give your ego control. That's why it's important to ask, who is thinking this? Does this thought have any benefit for me? If you know it's coming from your ego, you know that it's a false thought. We're constantly planting new seeds into our minds. Every thought is like a seed. So choose what seeds you're going to sow in your mind and then nurture them. Allow them to grow. Nothing happens without thought. You're the only one who's responsible for your thought. 100% responsibility. So let's talk about some more tools. Again, the thought provoker. I want to encourage you to find something. And here's what's nice about a thought provoker. You can change it at any time. If you don't like it, get something else. I like to use rocks from our family vacations. That way, I've got a memory associated with it that's really happy. So if I'm feeling down, all I've got to say is just kind of go back to that vacation day, wherever it was. Has anyone ever heard the story 3 Feet from Gold? How many? Because I don't want to, not everybody. I'm going to tell it, okay? In your search, and really in life, I think persistence it's my favorite word because it pretty much gives you permission to do anything, right? There's an uncle and a nephew. Nephew's name is R.U. Darby. At the turn of the 20th century, they caught gold fever. And they purchased a claim in Colorado, did some testing, and found, based on the results, that they had a pretty good chance at a high-producing mine. So they covered up all their tracks, went back to New England. They got their friends and family to invest, came back the next spring, and they got after it. And they got on the gold pretty quick. Their first carload of ore showed that this was a very good mine. All they needed was one more carload, and all their debts were paid, and it was profit from there on out. But something happened. What do y'all think happened? Ran out of gold. And they kept digging on and digging on and digging on and digging on. No gold. So finally, they just sold all their equipment to a junk dealer and headed back home. Now, this junk dealer was smart. He hired a mining engineer to come look at the mine. And after a few calculations, the engineer said, you know what, I think if you move 3 feet over here, you'll be back on the gold. That's exactly what happened, and that mine wound up being the richest mine in Colorado history. Now, R.U. Darby, the nephew, he paid back every penny that his friends and family had put in. And he actually became one of the most successful life insurance salesmen in the country. What he told himself every time somebody said no was, I was 3 feet from gold, and I'm not going to let no keep me from making this sale. And that's the kind of attitude you have to have with your job search. I've hired people strictly on their persistence before because they came back. And so, I want to encourage you to, if there is that dream job out there and you've been told no, make them sick of seeing you. It's okay. Persistence gives you the right to do that. You can go back in and say, I don't think you understand, or maybe we need to talk a little more. Keep fighting for it. If you really want it, the only thing that's going to guarantee you not having it is you giving up. That's it. It may not be today. It may happen 6 months from now. But if you give up, it's never going to happen. Think about nature, right? Again, we got all these beautiful oaks in central Texas. The oak comes from a simple acorn. Did you know that it takes 50 years for an oak to produce acorns? But once that happens, it'll produce acorns for the next 700 to 1,000 years. It's a pretty good return on investment, but it doesn't happen overnight. And that's kind of where we get tripped up, and our instant gratification. Use persistence, but don't have expectations that are completely unrealistic. Expect a miracle to happen, but don't define what that miracle has to be. Allow yourself to be surprised by it. God's pretty cool. He usually gives me more than what I ask for, right? But I've kind of gotten in the habit of I've stopped asking because I know that He knows way more than I do for what I need. And so I'm like, whatever the best thing is, I'm down. Create the idea, which is planting the seed, and that idea is the perfect career. This morning, maybe. Persistently hold with faith that your idea is a reality. Watering, right? How it evolves and grows really isn't up to you. When we plant a tree or a rose plant, do we say, I only want my branches to grow to the right? We don't have any control over what's going on there. And so when we're planting a seed inside our subconscious mind, it's doing stuff that we're not conscious of. There's 11 million bits of information going through per second. We're only conscious of 20 of them. So don't limit yourself on how good this can be. And also, when you talk about the end result, is the end result really the position, or is it what you're going to gain from it? What you're going to be able to provide your family? What kind of happiness that you're going to have with the collaboration you have. I want you to think about the experience that you desire with your job, not the position. Because if you're thinking about just one or two positions, you're limiting what God can do for you. Think about the experience, because it may come from a completely other field that you're not even thinking about. But if you're open, then that opportunity can come to you. It's like what kind of flower does a bee visit? It's got to be blossomed. You can't pollinate a closed bud, so be a blossom. Be open to what the possibilities are. Be persistent in asking these questions. This is a list of all of them. I saw some people taking photos. Can I get a couple of just two volunteers real quick? Come on up. Come on. Blake, bring me a book, will you? All right, now what we got here is we got a birthday party. Okay? Who wants to get the present?
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, you have been thinking about giving this gift for the last year. Okay? And he's going to be so excited about it. You can't wait to see his reaction. That's how excited you are, right? Now, I got to turn my mic off to give you your instructions. Okay, so here we go. It's birthday time. Give him his present.
David, I can't wait for you to have this present. I've been waiting all year to give you this. You're going to love it.
Yeah. Thanks. Could be something better.
The receipt's inside.
Good job, guys. And I've got another book for you, too. Now, y'all can go ahead and sit down, but I want you to think about everything in your life as a gift. My car stinks. I hate it. I don't like the place I'm living in. I don't like my clothes. Now, do you think he's going to get another present next year? No. Why would you want to give somebody that's not happy with what you've given them? So how can you expect to continue to get better things when you're saying what you have is not good enough? Gratitude is huge. And I missed on gratitude most of my life. I thought it was just saying, oh, thanks. But real gratitude produces a real feeling, almost like being in love, right? You can feel it. You just feel great. And so I want to encourage you to create a gratitude list and review it daily. So when you see that thought provoker, go to your gratitude list. When you catch yourself thinking negatively, a lot of people say, well, I don't know what positive thoughts to use. Go to your gratitude list. That'll get you out of it right away. And, gratitude is just the secret sauce of everything, because the more you're grateful, the more stuff you have to be grateful for. You can find gratitude in everything. You can find gratitude in being unemployed even. Because what is it teaching you? What are you having to do? You know, how are you becoming stronger? Right? After we go through a tough journey, when we get to the end and we look back at it, it's never as bad as we thought it was when we were there, right? Okay? Recognize success in everything that you're doing. You can make everything in your life successful. So like this is a little Lego castle. And if we owned a castle, we'd want to be at the very top of the tower, probably. But we can't have a tower without the building underneath it. And we can't have the building underneath it without a solid foundation. Every piece of that foundation is a success. So even when you go on an interview and that's a no, that's a success. Because what if it was a terrible job to begin with? Right? That's a success because now I have more experience for the next interview. That's a success because I learned something that I didn't know before that I can talk about with the next company. You can make everything you do a success. I said I've been fired twice, right? The last one was extremely successful because it allowed me to own my own business. I would have never done it if I hadn't have been fired. But I'm so glad I did. Use your imagination. Think about what's possible. There's a really great game you can play with yourself. It's called the What If Up game. You usually want to say, what if the worst possible thing happens, right? Change that around. What if today's the day I get the call? What if I get a better offer than I even expected? Think about what's possible, not what's negative. Create a barrier between you and negativity. That's the main thing. It's going to come, but if you'll use these tools, and I haven't gone through all of them, you can really change your life and make things happen for you. So I really appreciate your time this morning. I wish you all the absolute very best. I'll hang around here for a while if anyone wants to visit. And we got bookmarks for everybody. Told you can get your workbook for free. And think a better thought. So thank y'all.
Any questions for Shane before he gets off the stage? Any questions?
I guess, Shane, how did you come up with your methodology, or how did you come up with your better thought?
Well, so I've been kind of a student of sales and success thinking all my life, and so lots of different books. Favorite books that I've read are Think and Grow Rich, The Science of Mind, The Science of Getting Rich, A Bug-Free Mind. I've read a lot of books in recovery, the whole Alcoholics Anonymous book, all those. And really, it's a combination of all that where I got it. But the big one probably was A Bug-Free Mind that really made the definition of the ego clear to me and how to just ask these simple questions.
Bugs?
Yeah, like BUG. So kind of like a computer bug, right? And that book's kind of compares your body being a computer and being programs you have to erase. It's a great book, but the audiobook was so bad. You can hear the guy's stomach growling as he's recording it. I'm like, okay, I can do this better.
So Shane, job search is full of ups and downs. When we're having a down day, what do we do to turn things around?
Well, your gratitude list can get you out of anything, right? And so what I recommend is, you know what the shortest prayer in the world is? Help. Right? So, prayer, a lot of times our minds are just racing so fast with trying to figure out what to do, then we need to shut them off. And being able to shut it off, if you call it meditation, prayer, whatever it is, that's really effective. Now, here's an exercise you can do when you get home. Think about one of the best moments of your life. Could be the birth of a child, your wedding day, whatever it may be, but one of the best moments. And see if you can focus only on that thought for 20 seconds without something else popping in there. The first time I tried this, I lasted about 2 seconds, over and over and over. I had to fight to actually get my brain to settle down. But that's a really good exercise to do. Just get it quiet. And then after you've had a little quiet time, pull that gratitude list out and feel it. Feel good.
Shane, what I've heard on gratitude list is you kind of do a surface list, and then you drill down on, like the top 5, and the deeper you can get on those top 5, the more that is going to penetrate. And then the more you can map that deeper level thoughts back to God and something He's done, it takes it even to a deeper level. Was that kind of alignment with what you heard? Good. All right, any other questions? Okay, great. Well, let's